continues to fracture.
A long campaign is now.
This is the car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is on assignment.
Welcome everybody, I'm Imran Siddiqui here with my co-host Alex Villarreal, and we have a jam-packed show for you this week.
We do. First, as Islamic State militants use religion to wage war, a debate over what that means for other Muslims.
Then, a look at first-term U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and his bid for the presidency.
In Kenya, making money doing Western students' homework.
And a photographic journey to some of America's most historic places.
You stay right there, we'll stay here, and together we will all be on assignment. A hijacking of religion. That's what one Islamic studies professor in the U.S. is calling Islamic State militants' campaign of violence in the Middle East. The fighters call themselves Islamic, but many say they do not represent the faith.
In the U.S., the debate has inspired some to say Islam needs a reformation. But religious scholars warn that such movements have been bloody in the past. Here's how VOA religion reporter Jerome Sokolowski covered the issue.
It was called the iconoclastic fury when 16th century Protestants destroyed statues considered to be idolatrous. Look familiar? Militants in Iraq have been destroying priceless treasures deemed to be un-Islamic, giving many who watch these videos the sense of living in a time warp.
Jerome, I thought it was kind of interesting that you started this report really going back to the 16th century when the Protestants then were destroying statues. Why'd you do that?
Right, well, partly I wanted to show that we've been through this before, we meaning the West in Christian history, but I also wanted to show that many people in the West, in America, are looking at this through Western eyes and ultimately come to this question of, well, if Muslims are doing what we did 4 or 5 centuries ago, are they also going to have the same process of reformation that Christians went through?
What does Reformation mean?
Well, Reformation was when Martin Luther, the leader of what we now know as Protestantism, challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. And essentially what it meant was that individuals could interpret Scripture, the Bible, for themselves. Some commentators argue that Islam needs a Protestant-like Reformation that rejects the traditional interpretation of Scripture. But Esposito says they should be careful what they wish for.
They'll say Islam needs a reformation. I sometimes say to some of my Muslim friends, what they're really saying then is genocide ought to take place or close to it. Because we think of the Reformation as the Enlightenment and we forget the 100 Years' Wars. From my point of view, what you've got is the hijacking of religion.
Islamic studies professor John Esposito says the injunction in the Quran to slay the unbelievers wherever you find them is being taken out of context.
How does Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi fit into all of this? What is it that he is trying to do?
Right, so what Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is doing is he's setting himself up as a kind of medieval leader. He calls himself a caliph. He's recreating the medieval Islamic empire called the Caliphate, and that is a very appealing concept for many Muslims because it harks back to a time when Islam was going through a golden age, when it was expanding, many people were converting to Islam. So it's a very kind of tempting, juicy idea for Muslims. Still, there are relatively few that accept it.
So it's sort of hard to see everything now as it is to see the statues and the artifacts being destroyed and to see so much death and destruction, the beheadings, the crucifixions and all of this, and it just seems that things are getting out of control. So is there any hope? Do experts see any hope in the future moving forward?
Well, I think there's hope. I mean, a reformation or a challenging of authority opens the door to many interpretations, and often, just good interpretations or peaceful interpretations can win out.
Is ISIS a part of Islam or not?
Well, that's what many people are talking about it, both within Islam and without and outside of Islam. In a way, some people argue that it is part of Islam because Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and his followers, they appeal to many passages in the Quran that talk about warfare. And Islam, when it was founded during a period of many wars, of tribal wars. But I think it's interesting to note that this and other stories that I do about Islam that talk about terrorism and extremism, almost all the responses that I get on VOA's webpage, on VOA's Facebook feed when these stories are posted, almost all the responses from Muslims are people who deplore what the extremists are doing. So I think there are many people out there, many Muslims out there, who really disagree and are and want and practice a much more peaceful, tolerant form of Islam than these people do.
Jerome Sokolovsky is our religion reporter here at VOA in Washington.
Well, we are taking a break. When we return, VOA's political guru spills all on the Republican Party's first official presidential candidate for 2016. You're watching On Assignment.
It's official. Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas is running for president. Cruz will be part of what is expected to be a large field of GOP contenders for the White House. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, is focused on Hillary Clinton, who has yet to announce her candidacy. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone joins me right now to talk about this. Thank you so much for joining me.
Sure.
Why do you think he announced it now when nobody else from GOP has come forward?
Well, Ted Cruz started first. He wants to get out there early, to get an early edge on some of the other better-known Republican contenders, people like former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. Cruz has an advantage in the sense that he has a base of support among the strongly conservative Republicans in the party. That's something he's going to need in the early primary states, places like Iowa and New Hampshire, so he wants to get them mobilized early.
Okay. What about his speech at Liberty University? Is that going to hurt him or help him?
No, it's going to help him with conservatives. He made some bold pledges, things like getting rid of the president's health care program, Obamacare. Also wants to abolish the tax collecting agency for the United States. That might find a lot of support with a lot of people, but it may not find much support down the line should he get into the general election with moderates.
Who do you think is going to be his toughest competition from the GOP?
It's a great question because right now we're going to have a very large Republican field, very diverse. You have people like Jeb Bush, who's well known in the party, but may have some problems with conservatives. You have some up-and-comers like Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin. You have Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. He'll announce soon. And Marco Rubio, another fresh face who's does not have a lot of experience. So Republicans will have a lot of choices. It's who can muster that support early on. And Cruz is hoping to use that conservative sort of cred he's built up with people in the Tea Party to sort of launch his bid. But right now in the polls, he's sort of back of the pack. Bush, Walker, Rand Paul, those are the people to watch early on.
Do you think Rand Paul and Cruz are on a collision course because he had his supporters sitting on the front lines at the Liberty University?
Yeah, they're going to be very much competing for similar groups. Cruz hopes, by the way, to go beyond the Tea Party type conservatives who care about the government and money to also spread into religious conservatives, hence his appearance at Liberty University.
Okay, let's talk about Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton is obviously the choice, but do you think there's someone else too?
Well, there will be other people probably getting in the race. They're not that well known. Democrats seem to be coalesced around Hillary Clinton, despite some criticism of late of her email controversy. And the question is, can Hillary really kind of restart herself, reinvent herself, present herself as a viable challenger, not only in the Democratic primaries, where she should do well, she's way ahead in the polls, but also if she does get to the general election in 2016, is there going to be a new Hillary? Which Hillary will the public see? The public knows her very well. What case, what argument will she make that it's time for her to be elected president and not just returning to the past? It's an issue that Jeb Bush may have to deal with as well.
All right, we keep an eye on that. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.
We're taking a break now. When we return, the story of an online intellectual marketplace that some students would rather not talk about. You're watching On Assignment. Check this out. Freelance writers in Kenya may be contributing more to academic research than we know. For a fee, Kenyans are increasingly writing assignments for students abroad.
Yeah, and clearly this academic outsourcing raises all kinds of ethical issues, but writers, they're just saying the money is too good to turn down. VOA Nairobi correspondent Gabe Joslow delves into what's going on right under the noses of some U.S. college administrators. Take a look.
Agri Iso has been in the academic writing business since 2010. As a freelancer, he can work wherever he wants. He gets his assignments through websites that post requests from students around the world.
This one is writing. Then the course level here is college, level 1, 2, freshman or a sophomore student. And then the topic category is business.
What about the ethical dilemma that seems to be inherent in something like this? Was it difficult to get some of these Kenyan writers to admit to you that they're doing this?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody we spoke to had who were actually writers, had a bit of a dilemma about doing this kind of work.
Pauline Chepkwani is a former academic writer and University of Nairobi graduate with a degree in sociology and a master's in international affairs. She struggled with the ethics of doing this type of work.
If you look at it from a moral or ethical perspective, it's kind of, yeah, it's not right.
But she says the pay was good, and in the end, it helped her to be better at her own studies.
They're making money off of this, so how much money are we talking?
A couple thousand shillings, which is between $25, $30 for assignments. It varies on the degree of difficulty, on the subject, on the amount of time that you have to complete the assignment. So potentially you can make hundreds of dollars a week. One guy who ran a service said he knew of people who are making thousands of dollars a week because they were just taking on so many assignments or farming their assignments out to other people.
In your piece, you talked about an Indian student who was trying to get into a Western program.
That's right. Well, it's often students, what we were finding out was that it seemed to be students who were studying in the United States or other Western countries, but who didn't speak English as a first language. There was a request for a woman from India who was seeking help to write an essay to get into a nursing program. And this was a really weird example because it was actually a first-person essay where she was supposed to write about her experiences and why she wanted to get into this program and make it very personal. So a writer in Kenya ended up taking the assignment. He said he had to go online and look up all this stuff about India and basically just assume the role, pretend he was an Indian woman trying to get into a nursing program. So it can be really surreal sometimes too.
Right, so as a Kenyan man trying to basically present yourself in an essay as an Indian woman, I mean, how do you do something like that? That requires, like you said in your piece, a lot of creativity, doesn't it?
He just tried to look up what he could, just tried to pretend that he was this woman and just went for it. I saw other assignments that were, strictly creative writing assignments. There was one where students were supposed to imagine conversations between two astronomers, Galileo and Kepler.
Are there any efforts, Gabe, on the university side to crack down on this?
Not that I heard of from the Kenyan side. Again, it's all a little bit under the radar. I can't say for sure whether it would be banned, but it doesn't seem like anybody's doing anything illegal from the Kenyan side. Again, from the side of the requesting students, it definitely violates a lot of academic rules.
So, Gabe, how was it that you even found out that this was happening?
Well, it's interesting. We have a producer here who works with us in the Nairobi bureau, and she went to the University of Nairobi and told me just while we were talking kind of offhand one day that she used to have friends that went to university with her who would do this type of work. So I said, that's such an interesting story. I really want to get into it. And I think we got some really interesting voices from Kenya, but the side of the story that I'd really like to hear more about would be from those students who are making these requests in the UK or the United States or wherever. Because it'd just be interesting to see what makes them want to do this, how pleased they are with the service. It would be difficult to talk to them because they are in violation of academic rules, but I think there's a lot more to this story that would be really fascinating to explore.
Yeah, there definitely is a lot more to explore here, and of course we want to make sure to say that we are in no way encouraging people to get involved in this on either side, the students, the Western students, or the students in Africa writing these papers, but we will continue to follow any and all updates from Gabe.
And as they say in our business, stay tuned for that. We want to introduce you now to a photo exhibit at the Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C. The photos in the exhibit and its corresponding book highlight some of the most historic sites and landscapes in the United States.
VOA's Julie Tabo joined the National Geographic photographer who captured the images as he revisited some of his favorite sites in Virginia. Here's Julie and her chat with On Assignment's Lisa Vora.
The picture was taken right about here.
Photographer Kenneth Garrett was given the assignment of a lifetime to photograph some of the most historic and sacred sites and landscapes in America. He traveled from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the site of the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War, through Maryland and West Virginia to the home of Thomas Jefferson, America's third president, in Charlottesville, Virginia. The 290-kilometer route is called the Journey Through Hallowed Ground National Heritage Area because many historians believe more history was made there than any other region in the country.
Tell me a little bit about some of the sites that he took pictures of, their historical significance and also spiritual significance.
Yes, so his assignment was, of course, to not only capture historic sites, but also everything from parks and trails, scenic routes, but also places that had a lot of sacred meaning. So Indian burial sites, of course the battlefields of Antietam and Gettysburg.
The site of the battle many consider a major turning point in the war.
To me, it was really, really moving to stand there on the edge of the forest where Robert E. Lee told his soldiers to walk out into that wheat field and just be mowed down by cannons and guns.
What did he exactly do to recreate that moment so that the person who sees the picture understands this is the significance?
Well, that was something that, of course, I think any artist, and especially photographers, that's what it's all about.
Right.
And he even said to me when we met in person and also in interviews on the phone and on camera, that a good picture can be done technically, beautifully, composition and framing and all of that.
Right.
But really, each picture, he said, especially for the book and the exhibit at the airport, had to have meaning.
Another place with spiritual significance is the Oatlands Plantation near Leesburg, Virginia, that had the largest slave population in the region.
Kenneth said, yes, I could have just gone and shot this beautiful house, but it was this house that was just looming, and it could have been really any mansion, but he walked around and he walked around and he kind of assessed it and said, I want to get the gardens. I want to be able to be in a spot where we get a perspective on the house and the land, the beautiful gardens around it. And so there was reason why he chose where he chose to shoot.
Much of the Hallowed Ground route is also known and being preserved for its spectacular natural beauty, like this valley not far from the Oatlands Plantation.
Many of the houses in this valley date to the late 1700s, more or less the same time as the American Revolution.
I noticed that you interviewed him in different spots, which I thought is what made this story better than others. What made you decide to go to different areas to interview him in front of the pictures that he took?
Right, and that's a good question because, as you know, pre-production is everything with these stories. So I was going back and forth quite a lot, not even so much with Kenneth, but the people involved with the Hallowed Ground project. And so a lot of emails back and forth about which areas within a few miles of each other can we go to. And what we decided is to go to 3 sites and compare and contrast the photographs from the book and from the exhibit and try to replicate. And of course, you have to understand, Lisa, the weather conditions, it was about a 30-mile-an-hour wind, really icy and snowy. And it was bad enough for me to walk around with a book, but I had my cameraman with a tripod on the camera on his shoulders, slipping and sliding through the ice and the wind, but we were able to put Kenneth's mic, we buried it deep inside.
Journey Through Hallowed Ground runs from Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence that began our nation.
Do you think that this kind of project, his project in particular, helps young people want to learn more about their history?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons they're doing this, there's many reasons. One is to just inform Americans anyway.
Yeah.
Another is to inform visitors. One of the reasons they have the exhibit at Dulles Airport is because millions of visitors are passing through this airport. People can read the book, look at the exhibit at the airport, his website.
And if you live here, you can just take the book and go on the journey.
Just meeting Kenneth, looking at the photographs, talking with him, and with the passion that he has about the history of this area, it inspired me to take my family last weekend to Upperville, Virginia. We went to a tavern there that's been there around for a couple of hundred years. So it is for people like you and I. It's never too late to learn more about the places that we're living in, but it's also for the students. And that's really one of their main objectives, is to get young people interested in history.
And when they know more about their history, they're more likely to have an investment in saving their history.
It's the place to be for artists and creators who want to change the world. South by Southwest, a collection of music, movie, and tech conferences and festivals held every year in Austin, Texas.
Tens of thousands of music fans, film buffs, and entrepreneurs crowded downtown streets for this year's event. And as VOA's Greg Flakus reports, the business and fun are gaining an increasingly international flavor.
Many of the people who come to Austin for South by Southwest each year come mainly for the parties and the music, and some of them come from very far away. The city of Austin bills itself as the live music capital of the world, and during South by Southwest, you can find music here from all over the world. Among the 500-some international acts, there are plenty who play hard rock, but there are also musicians playing ancient Chinese instruments, and a woman from Pakistan who sings in traditional folkloric style. Groups often gain valuable exposure at South by Southwest, and Mumitrol lead singer Ilya Lugatenko has such hopes.
There is a few bands who made it successfully commercial, but I hope we're one of them. That's why we save enough money to get to Austin.
Some bands do so well here, they're invited back again. And some, like the German group Milky Chance, have fans here who know their song lyrics well. The international flavor of South by Southwest is also evident in the interactive and film events, and quite often they draw the same people. Carlos Adriano de Lima Santana represents a film company in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
We came to enjoy the festival, to listen to some music, to learn about some new things here.
Brazil was well represented this year with 59 companies, more than double the number from last year. Companies from around the world set up displays here to show their products and enhance their brands. Event organizers say more than 72,000 people registered for this year's conference. Local residents complain about the crowds and the traffic, but the city estimates this year's economic impact at $315 million. Greg Flakus, VOA News, Austin, Texas.
Wow, such an incredible event, right? And it's something that I've always wanted to do, is to go to South by Southwest. Have you had the chance?
I wish I had been there, but I've heard so much about it. If you're into music and if you're into movies, you want to launch your career, South by Southwest is a place to be.
Yeah, and tech too. I mean, we see so many ideas coming out of there that end up a few years down the road becoming part of all of our lives.
Yeah.
So amazing stuff going on there. Well, that is all our time for today. Very sad. But you should definitely come see us next week for a look at the lives of some of New York's taxi drivers. And these are people who come to the Big Apple from all over the world.
And you can check us out online at voanews.com. Until then, thank you so much for spending the half hour with us. On behalf of our entire team here at On Assignment, goodbye.